in this lesson, we'll begin painting the texture for the head of our character. So jumping into Mudbox here, if I go ahead and go to the paint tools, choose the paintbrush and try to start painting on the head, it's going to give me the option to create a new paint layer because we haven't done that for the head yet. So I'm going to go ahead and call this something like head color. We'll make it a fairly large texture map, and here you can choose the size, and save as is fine. Channel we'll leave at diffuse because we're going to be painting color on this. Now before we actually do this, let me go in and actually edit the material, because you'll notice that the color is actually coming from the material right now. So if we start painting and blending on top of this color, it's actually blending with the material, which is not necessarily as portable as we would like. So we want all the texture to come from all the color to come from the texture map. So to ensure that that happens, I'm going to choose the diffuse color in the texture map and create something that will make it very obvious if the color that we're seeing is from the material. So I'll just make that a green color. Now we can go back here and make our paint layer. Let's say OK. And now we can start to choose under the paintbrush. I'll choose a base color, and I'll just make it something, I don't know, something like that. Don't have to be too exact depending on the character that you're making. This guy happens to be a Caucasian who's been out in the sun a lot, so we're going to be looking at some browns and reds and tans, those kind of colors. So maybe start with something like that, and maybe a little bit too orange, but we'll be blending a lot together. So I'm going to go into the object list, and you can either lock these, or we could also just isolate this and just start painting across this. Now I'm not going to choose a stamp or anything. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this in, because all I'm doing right now is just covering all of that green. So I just want to cover up all the green that I can see here, anywhere that I can see it. And so I don't really need to worry about any sort of stamp or stencil or texture. I can turn on mirroring, make things a little bit easier. Okay. So I'll just come in here and paint across and try to get all the little areas. Don't want to miss any. Under the chin, we'll make sure that we get, just make sure that we get in here and up on the head, and just cover that up. Okay. Now once we get that base coat down, just within the same paint layer, I'm going to go ahead and start changing things up a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and grab Dodge, and I want to get one of these stamps up here, maybe this one or this one, something like that. Okay. And now I want to come in and let me go ahead and take our brush size up, take our strength down a little bit, and just kind of experiment with some of these different stamps. Okay, and I just want to start to kind of break things up a bit. Okay, so coming in here, again, this is kind of a layering approach, so you're not going to get the exact look that you want. Let me turn on randomize here. You're not going to get the exact look that you want right away, but once you start layering some of these on top of each other, it'll start to look a little bit better. So I can come in here and just start to break things up a little bit. Okay. We can go to burn instead of dodge and get the same stamp here. We take our strength down a bit. Okay, and then we can go the other way and just start to use burn to kind of add that variation into the skin. Okay, and you can see you can very quickly get some nice sort of broken up, a nice broken up look here. Kind of come across the head. Now it's going to be covered by hair, but I'll go ahead and continue to paint that anyway. Okay, and if you find that the detail you're getting is a little bit too coarse, you can just decrease your brush size here. Come in and make things a little bit finer. Come across the lips, down to the chin. Okay, and just kind of break things up a little bit. Okay, we can also turn on our viewport filters, our cavity, ambient occlusion, and ambient occlusion, just so we get a better idea of where those shadows are going to be. Okay, then we can come in here and just kind of break this up. Now we can go back with our paintbrush, and we can come back in with our color and kind of go over that and just kind of blend it back in. Let me go ahead and again randomize that and just start to blend it back into the head. Okay, so this is a a step that you can really use your own judgment artistically and really get something that you like. I'm just going to kind of add that initial color back in there a little bit. Maybe come back in along the back of the neck and do the same thing. Okay. Now maybe the top of the head is going to be a little bit lighter underneath the hair. So we can come in and just overall kind of lighten that up behind the hairline. Okay, even though we're not going to see it really that much. So we'll go ahead and just kind of lighten that up. And then up here on the face, we can go ahead and get our color and we can make that a little bit more red. All right, and then play with our blending, take our strength way down, come in here, and in areas where he might have gotten a little bit more sun, start to play that in. Now that's probably a little bit too saturated, so I'm going to take that back out a little bit. And just start to come in and add a little bit of that red in there. Remember, you can always go back over anything that you've done. So we can add a little bit of that red coming in here. Gives a little bit more life to it along the chin as well. Around the jaw. We darken it up a little bit. Darken that up along around the nose as well. Okay. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like makeup, so I'm going to kind of blend it back into the face a little bit more with that initial color, which we can sample very easily. Just can hit I to sample that color, and we can start to just drop that back into our model. Again, using that stamp. Just coming back in here. And you also might want to kind of darken up the area right around the eyes, the eye socket, that flesh underneath the eyes. You may want to kind of play around with the darkness in there. Come in with your burn and just kind of add a little bit of color to that. And then you can always come back in, go back over it. So it's just kind of a back and forth will work really well, I think, to get that kind of layered approach. Kind of darken that up underneath there, and then use your paintbrush and maybe just work color back into it. Okay, now once you get your paint in, if you find that you want to actually change the overall color of the whole paint layer, you can do that very simply by going into layers, choosing that paint layer, going up to our little arrow here, go to adjust color. And now we can come in and we can adjust the hue. So if we wanted to make it a little bit more in the red, we could lighten it up a bit. Could take the saturation out of that if you wanted to make it a little bit more into the pink. And so you can really have a lot of control over the look. Even if you don't get the exact color that you want initially, you can come in and really play around with this and get the look that you want. Okay, so I can come in and maybe adjust this a little bit, so maybe it's not so tan there. And so we'll say okay to that. we can start to come in and break this up a little bit more, so you can see we lost a little bit of that detail. So we can use our burn, come in and just start to add in there. You can see how we could just start to break that up a bit and go back in with some of those colors that we had earlier. All right, we can also come in and paint the lips. So those I'm going to take off the stamp and go ahead and get something like that, maybe a little bit darker. And again, we can adjust all of these as well, but I just want to come in and start to paint through here just so there's a little bit of a difference between the skin and the lips. And we can continue to adjust this if we want to make this a little bit more pink, be a little bit less saturated over this, so we can really dial it in. And then we can come back over it. Now, obviously that's a little bit too much. I really want to kind of lighten that up a bit. So really just kind of dial this in, give it the look that you want, and just paint the base color and then start to layer detail over that. So then we can come in, get our stamp back. We can start to paint over this and really start to dial this in. So I probably want to add a little bit more in the brown to this head overall. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to paint on this. And then in the next lesson, we'll come in and start to go ahead and continue on with this process by painting in the eyebrows and the eyes. So we'll go ahead and do that next.